Jen here. Happy 4th of July for those who celebrate. I was never really into fireworks. They are pretty, but I don't really care for the noise. I'm not big on the sound of bombs and gunfire, but I am big on freedom. But I just say freedom is just another word for sovereignty, and we all have that. We just need to learn how to utilize it better, and some of us need to remember how to utilize it, period. I know I was one of those people. So my children are older, and hey, Katia. Hello. My kids are older, so holidays are different now. And I can kind of relax a little bit and not have to do as much as I usually do. Plus, I started working, so I'm taking a break, and I wanted to touch base with you guys. I hope you're well. Even if you don't watch this on the 4th, you can listen to it at another time. I try to now make the content of the videos the quote-unquote star. I don't really do face-to-face videos a whole lot, but I do think that the sovereignty and consent videos and hierarchy videos are going to require some face-to-face videos. I actually got a whiteboard so I can explain the visualizations that I have in my mind. So I think that will help me to relay some things better to you guys. Anyways, this is a painting by Thomas Cole. He's quickly become one of my favorites. His paintings are just so surreal. It feels like you could just step into them, and those are the best kind of paintings, I think. Even if they're fantastical, if they're that well done in detail, it's almost like you're looking into the window of another world, which is pretty cool. I think mankind is awesome for our creativity, and I believe that our benefactor, the one who made us, our maker, bestows that upon us because, like children, we carry along traits of our creator. So we've been digging into consciousness, but we've also been looking at, I know it's weird, shapeshifters. How does that play into consciousness? Well, are we our bodies? How much of our bodies are we? And is it possible? Allegedly, death is painful. One of the Catholic doctor, or I don't even know if it's a doctrine, it might be a dogma, and I'd never heard it until recently, so I think it's one of those older things that's not talked about a lot. But they say that at the moment of death, it hurts because your soul is being separated from your body. Now, if that's true, that would mean that we actually need our bodies, or that at least in part, in some way, we are attached to our physical matter. But if we think of the saying, mind above matter, your mind is literally above in the hierarchy. Picture a brain, right? And a couple of arrows down, and that's your body, right? So your mind, and we're using the brain as a representation of the mind. I don't think your mind is fully contained in that physical manifestation, but I do believe it is attached to it. It is a visual, and so things are born in the spirit, and then they come to be in the physical. So mind over matter, allegedly in the secret schools, and apparently Christ knew this as well, because he did it. One of the last tasks or works, and I know people hate that word, it's been turned into a bad word. I'm not saying salvation requires works per se. I'm saying that it's a natural flow of your spiritual evolution, that you realize, I can't stay in this state that I'm in. In the dark night of the soul, you kind of look at yourself. You are a mirror unto yourself, and you see reflected back at you all of the darkness that is inside of you. And you're like, you come to that moment of, okay, that apex. Am I going to welcome in the dark wolf inside of me? Am I going to temper it? Am I going to tame it? Or am I going to remove it? And how much of it is me? Some of it is a part of us, right? Because we're wielding the physical manifestation, things begin as a thought. So some of the darkness in some way is a part of us. Darkness isn't necessarily equivalent to evil. Okay, so let's make sure that's clear. The Catholic Church is often villainized for putting things like gremlins and things, gargoyles on the outsides of churches. But if you know your history, they are said to keep away evil spirits. And that's why people wear masks on All Hallows Eve, because it is allegedly a night when the veil is thin. And if you wore a mask, it would keep away evil spirits from the real you, okay? These things, people say they're pagan, and are they superstitious? Somewhat, yes. All of these things can be overcome with the power of your mind. Ego just means I and self. And yes, in action, we are supposed to be more selfless. But in doing this, it increases our white wolf, right? So works are a natural progression of salvation, of recognizing, even in my state, God loves me. But because I love God and because I now love myself by proxy, I need to clean myself up. And if for nothing else, then for my fellow man around me, so that I'm not a negative or evil, wicked influence per se. And I'm getting somewhere with this. I apologize. I do go around the block a bit, as they say. Hold, please. I need a drink. Okay. And I like to give you pretty pictures while I lead into these topics. So how much of our consciousness is, quote unquote, attached to us? Now, it is said when someone needs deliverance, right, it is because they have something attached to them. Something that is not them. Something that has a mind of its own. Which means that if that happens to you, you are no longer the master of your own domain. This is when utilizing your sovereignty comes into play. And willpower. You have to really use your will, your free will. It is given to you as it is yours. You can say no to any of these things. But we can have things become attached to us. We get rid of those things. And the Bible tells us this, and so do other texts, but in different ways. We are told to confess to one another. But when you confess, it has to be done in such a way as to where you are coming in front of God, right? And the priest, because Catholics are very big on visualization. Every ritual has its symbology, right? You brush your teeth, and what is the symbology of that? That is a ritual you do every morning, every day, or most of us. What is the symbology in that? Cleanliness, right? You're cleaning your vessel. Cleanliness is next to godliness, but every ritual has its symbology. And so when you confess to a priest who should be chaste and sin-free, which makes them closer to God just by default, okay? Because again, there is a hierarchy here at play. A hierarchy implies what? Order. Now, when you have free will, that is the exception to the rule. And exceptions are what prove rules to us. They prove that rules exist, that the opposite must be true, right? If this happens, then the opposite must be true. And that's how the rule is proven, right? Okay, so free will is an anomaly. It is an unquantified variable that could go almost any way. So no matter what type of angelic assistance you have, even the angels in heaven know not the day, right? They don't even know exactly how our free will is going to play into God's plan, okay? So even if you have aid, your free will can override that aid. But if you confess your sin, what this does is it removes guilt and the burden that is put upon you. I don't know if you'll notice, but the more humble somebody is, and or the more guilty and shameful someone feels, and that's kind of where humility comes from at first, is by being shamed by your own appearance. They literally look heavier. They crouch down, their shoulders are down. They're like, man, I feel like I've messed up everything, which I've kind of had issues with myself. I've had to really work on my posture. They become a burden on your back. There's an old Japanese movie that I watched, a horror movie, because they make some amazing horror movies, and actually they do a lot well. Anyways, they showed this man's guilt for killing this woman. It was an accident, but they showed his guilt by her spirit literally being on his shoulders every day. He would get up out of bed and she would climb on his shoulders, and he would get heavier and heavier every day because he was carrying the burden of the shame and guilt of murdering this woman. When you free yourself of shame and guilt by confessing, that is natural deliverance right there. You are delivering yourself from one of the shackles that bind you by just standing up straight in righteousness, being a righteous man, and claiming your sovereignty, righteous man, woman, or child, and saying, this doesn't have to be this way, okay? So there's a lot at play with our consciousness, but also with how this is playing out in physical form. You have to think of all this matter around us, everything that we see, touch, feel, and taste. That is all coming from, yes, us, and the plan from spirit, right? And it's all born of spirit, and it's all coming from that place. So if you can alter your conscience, let's say you get to such a state as where you are at such a high frequency and or vibration, right? Where you're above the dark demonic forces that are trying to torment you, and they can't attach to you anymore, right? Why? Number one, you're living a cleaner life. And I just like the word sin now because it implies like it's something everyone has done. It is transgression against natural law. You're going against nature in some way. In some way, that is the root of sin. It's transgression. It's going backwards, which is ironic considering what we're seeing in today's society play out. And kind of right now we're reaping what we've sown into our own environments, right? We're seeing the things that we've said and done coming to fruition. We're seeing the Bible, words of God, coming to fruition, but we're also seeing other scripts coming to fruition, which must mean that our own words have power as well. So if we get to such a state as to where we rise above the dark, what would I call that? It's like a symbiotic sentient intelligence, but it's lower level. It's the black goo, and it should be below us. It should not be a part of us. It should be apart from us. Okay? Apart from us. If you get to such a state, can you change your own physical matter? And that is called transmutation. Allegedly, that's the last step in the mystery schools. That is how you become a master. What are you a master of? Well, you're a master of your own domain at that point because you're controlling your own matter like it's Play-Doh in your hands, your spiritual hands, so to speak. In this way, the Mormons might be right when their book says, and again, this is why I don't limit myself. That's superstition to say, oh my gosh, that book is going to hurt me. The book is not what's going to hurt you. How you wield that information or that knowledge, and not all knowledge is truth, and we have to know this. But if we get to that point, right, where we can transmute, what is the counterfeit of that? Because there's always a counterfeit, right? There's always a false thing. Just like for resurrection, the falsity or the fallacy of resurrection would be reincarnation, because reincarnation is when you get like the memory wipe thing, and that forgetting is not being of service to us or others, which is why we're here. And so that forgetting is not useful. So reincarnation would be the counterfeit of resurrection. So follow me here. if you get to the point where you can transmute your own matter. Christ was transmuted on top of Mount Zion. Was it Mount Zion? I might be wrong. And it was in front of the Spirit. I want to say, was it Noah and Moses? And it is called the witnessing. They are the witnesses of Christ's. They see him they see him uncovered, much like Noah was uncovered in his tent. Christ's physical matter falls away, and they see the beauty of the light that is him within. They are the two witnesses. And these things play out over and over and over again, right? So they are the two witnesses of Christ's transmutation. You won't know this unless you read the Catholic Bible, because it's not in the Protestant Bibles. A lot of this stuff has already happened. Does it have to happen again? Who am I to say that? I don't know. Thanks for hanging in there with me. You could give it a thumbs up if the language is useful, because I know this. We're going to get really deep into like the dark night of the soul and stuff, and that might go on the new channel because not everybody is ready to hear certain things. So if you can transmute your energy, what would be the counterfeit of that? Oops. Okay. So here's what they're defining it as. In mythology, folklore, and speculative fiction. Thank you. Shapeshifting is the ability to physically transform oneself through an inherently superhuman ability, divine intervention, demonic manipulation, sorcery spells, or having inherited the ability. I am so glad that the definition is so full, right? That's a good thing. Because again, when we use different words to explain the same things, we're dividing ourselves in theory, right? And in mindset, we're kind of dividing ourselves. We should be divided, right? What does the Bible say? Go forth and multiply. What does multiply mean? You're dividing pieces of things. This is why, you have division and multiplication. They are a yin and yang. You have adding and subtraction. You have yin and yang. You have male and female, yin and yang. You have dark and light, yin and yang. You have the dark wolf and the light wolf, yin and yang. There's always going to be, I think, this binary element to this age, at least. Now what's coming, and I want to get in, I know this is going to get weird. And this is going to sound strange. But I tell you how the media, how things we're seeing, they're not all meant to harm us. They're not all meant to put us in fear. Some of them are supposed to be a message about something entirely different, but we're listening with the wrong ears and seeing with the wrong eyes. What do I mean by this? We are looking at things in a sexual nature because, and I've tried to say this before, is it the person perceiving the issue, the problem, or is it the person acting out the issue, the problem? Are we seeing the rainbow community in the wrong way? Are we receiving and hearing that message in the wrong way? Are we allowing people outside of that? Because this happens a lot with me as a Catholic. People judge a lot from the outside of a group. And that's very easy to do. Anyone can do that. Speculation, anybody can speculate. And the funny thing about speculation is my speculation will differ from yours and theirs and his and hers and yada, yada, yada. And Samantha down the block. Because we're all at different angles in this light spectrum. Like a diamond, right? There's different angles on it. So you might be right next to me and our arms might be touching, but we're still seeing things from a little bit of a different angle. So our perspectives will differ, which affects our life experience here, which affects our personal paradigm, the hierarchy within our own mind. Okay? And I know you're like, this is supposed to be about shape-shifting. What are you going on about? Consciousness has a lot to do with this and how we perceive things. The rainbow community, you have people saying, I'm non-binary. What do they mean by that? Are people from outside that community villainizing them? Are these people somehow being born like this and we're not listening to them? Are we looking at this from a quote unquote sexual nature? And again, this is not medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is spiritual speculation of physical manifestation. This is me trying to understand my own matter, my own body, my own experience here. It's not because I am special. It is because I'm saying, if you're feeling these things too, and if you're seeing things differently, and if you're experiencing things that maybe are out of the quote unquote societal norm, I want you to know that you're not alone. Knowing that you're not alone is key. Some people say when you die, you go back to this one source, one light. I don't want to go backwards. Going backwards isn't a good thing. I don't want to be some part of an amalgamation. God gave birth to us, right? God came into this consciousness awareness. That was the beginning consciousness, was we're all one. We were a part of God. And then God literally gave birth to us via her own ideas and thoughts, and how, I don't know how it happened. That is what I'm trying to understand through things like quantum mechanics. But quantum mechanics and the way atoms work, we've always been told that these things are immovable. They're not changeable. Now, Gnosticism, and again, people of the church might call me a heretic, because I find that there's this common thread, and that's what I'm picking at. I'm trying to pull it out of all of these faith systems and say, here it is, this is the truth. Because if they all have that one underlying thing in common, that is what's true. And it's always hidden. It's not going to be obvious. You always have to find it. That's just how this place works. Science and or faith, I don't want to use the word religion. Science and faith go hand in hand. Science is the physical manifestation of spiritual workings. So we were born for a purpose. We're meant to evolve to the point where we can be like God. We're not going to be God, okay? We're never going to be that. We didn't be, that's not us. But we came from God. And the whole point of all of this was to share in love and camaraderie, and to have a family. But it's all for our good. Everything happening here is so that we can evolve. But which path do you choose? Is it resurrection or is it reincarnation? Is it your own choice? Do you get to choose and pick because of the law of consent? So shape-shifting, your physical matter, wouldn't that naturally be a part of your spiritual evolution? Wouldn't you naturally be the master of your own domain? And I know this is far out there, and I know it's a little Gnostic. Again, let me be clear. I believe there is male and female for a reason. That is to give birth to new beings and new life. And I believe spirit has gender. I do. I see it. But I don't believe we're all the same here. And we're told in every ancient text, and that's what I have on the other tab here. We're told in every ancient text that there was a mingling of more than one species. It just is. That is a common thread in every ancient text, is that there was an intermingling of mankind with something else. If God is just, and we know that God is just, that is part of natural law. And there are angels or beings in charge of justice. That's how the hierarchy works. Everyone in the hierarchy has their job that they were created to do. For some, it's justice. It's just their nature. So I don't think we should necessarily hate these beings. I don't think, because we don't know. I don't know how I'm different than you. I know in mind and heart, I'm different than a whole lot of people. But does that make me not of mankind? I have no idea. So this is what we're searching for, is we're seeing these differences now. Like you can tell that not everybody here is the same. And it's not because of visual tricks or manipulation and technology, although we know that exists too. And just because one thing is true, it does not mean that another thing is not true at the same time. There are many things that fall under the veil of truth, just like there are many things that fall under the veil of fallacy. So where do we see shape-shifting? Well, I want to show you the one that came to me, and it's why I use that clip, or that thumbnail. Okay, so that's a good rendering somebody drew. You have the old hag and the beautiful queen. Okay, there is so much symbology in Snow White, and this is why they tell everybody that Disney is evil. Why do they tell you that? Because there's too much truth in what they're sharing. Look at everything that's being villainized right now. Honestly, you want to take a look at. Always test the spirit. Always use proper discernment. But there is truth in this. I know it. I've seen it. You've seen it the last few years. Some of you. I know you have because I get your emails. So what happens in this story? Let's talk about this real quick. What is the queen? Well, we know right off the bat she's a sorceress or a witch, right? We know this. But she's beautiful. We've always been told that witches are old hags. Now look at, like I told you earlier, the gargoyles on the Catholic churches. They were to keep away evil spirits. People wore masks on All Hallows Eve because that's the night when the veil's the thinnest. Originally, the night was devoted to saints. And I've gotten into that in other videos. Of course, they tell you it's pagan. We all have things in common because we all have people who've been in every group. We are all blended at this point. Okay? We have to look again at all of these things and say, okay, what is okay to do and what is not okay? And intent has a lot to do with this. I'm somebody, for example, I'm not against crystals. They're used all throughout the Old Testament, all over the place. Yet today we're told they're evil. Why? Because they could aid in raising our vibrational frequency if utilized properly. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a teacher. I'm seeking, just like most of you. So this is why I'm not special. This is why the content is what's important and the journey is what's important. But also separating what is truth and what is not in that knowledge. The search for knowledge is not bad or evil within and of itself, right? It is the knowledge that you use and you choose to believe and receive as truth. That will change your personal paradigm. And we are told, too, that we are judged how we judge. So we must be very careful. We are also told we shall judge the angels. But who is who at this point? I think that's where the veil of forgetfulness comes into play. I think for some it's a blessing. And I think it's what might allow certain beings to ascend even if they were told they couldn't. Because condemnation is a huge part of this too. And that's where I separate myself from the church system, is all the condemnation. That condemnation is meant to instill fear and shame and guilt. And what does that do? I told you earlier, that attaches things to you. So let's look at this. There's a difference between actually transmuting your own energy and being in charge of that, or, pay attention here because this gets weird, or your physical matter changing because of the evil or wicked deeds that you do. There's a difference between something attaching to you and you taking on that appearance and you actually becoming something else. So what does the witch do? Again, we're told that witches are ugly. We're also told Satan shall come as an angel of light. And gargoyles were kept on churches to keep away evil spirits. Look at all the beautiful angels painted. Are they the good guys or the bad guys? Because at this point, we don't know who wears what jersey. And I think that's a really important part of this journey. That should tell us a lot. We're not supposed to judge each other unrighteously. It's about heart and character. And we're going to judge anyway. It's kind of what we do. So let's at least control how we're doing that. It's easy to say this group is evil, that group is evil from the outside of it. But unless you're actually a part of that group, you don't know. I've actually went to Protestant churches. I've went to Protestant Bible studies and attended for weeks or months at a time when this journey began for me, when I was seeking truth. I was brought back home to the Catholic Church, not to the Pope per se. It's not about man for me. It's about spirit, okay? We've got to separate the two. And we've also got to separate the flock from the teachers. We have some very good wolves in sheep's clothing out there. They're the ones leading masses astray. If we are going to have teachers and leaders, and it seems we always shall, for the ones who come next, right? The one who is the student shall turn into the master and the teacher. So we must teach the student properly. Much like now we're seeing our chickens come home to roost in the youth. Because what happened? The internet happened. Electronic babysitters happened. Devices in everybody's hand happened. And we all were a part of it. I'm not condemning you. That's not what this is about. This is about freeing us from condemnation, shame, and guilt, which keeps us tied down and allows these dark energies to attach to us so that we can't vibrate at a higher frequency. Are we meant to get out of here? We might just be meant to raise the frequency of this whole place and restore it to its original form. That might be our job because it's part of the plan. It was part of the original plan all along to make us like God so we could vibrate on that same frequency and have fellowship with the one who made us. And that's Holy Spirit there, because I don't always even know what I'm about to say. But anyways, hold please. Where else have we seen this? You got a beautiful queen. You got the wicked witch, and what's she given? An apple. And mirrors are what? Mirrors are reflections. We are reflections made in the image of God. Did God create us in a mirror? A mirror, so to speak. I believe we were born in water. And water is a reflective surface. Not everything we've been told is wicked, though. There's symbology in this. She turns ugly and nasty because she's about to do an evil work. But I'm also going to show you the lore that goes along with this that says this is actually a possibility, that you can change your physical manifestation and or form to take on the look or image of something other than your own self. Where else have we seen this? Where else have we seen this shape shifting? Oops, sorry. There we go. Then Cheshire Cat, and I'm doing this with you. I'm just giving you what's coming off the top of my head, so feel free to please post examples yourself, because I don't read everything that's out there. What does the Cheshire Cat do throughout his whole meeting with Alice? He changes form. Sometimes he's just a head floating along like a genie. He changes his environment, the background. He changes his physical visage. He is a cat to begin with, which is huge symbology for the Egyptian culture. I don't even know what they call their religion. I just know that, I know some things about it, and I see it reflected today. Cats are really big right now. There's on a side note, there's a underground, what do you call it? I don't even know what you call it. Arc, I don't know what it started at. Rumor that cats are taking over. Cats. And that they give humans this quote-unquote illness that makes them do their bidding. I found that fascinating. What else changes its form? What's another word for shapeshifter? It's a changeling. Historically referred to as an elf or an oaf is a human-like creature found in folklore throughout Europe. A changeling was believed to be, and again, this is where knowledge of words comes in handy. A changeling was believed to be a fairy that had been left in place of a human, stolen by other fairies. Well, what does it look like? A fairy child may appear sickly and will not grow in size like a normal child and may have notable physical characteristics such as a beard or long teeth. They may also display intelligence far beyond their apparent years, as well as possess uncanny insight. This is what I thought of fairies too in the book of Revelation for the description of the locusts that come out of the pit, because they have hair like men and women and the teeth like lions, and fairies have fairies again. We're on one end we're told they're beautiful and stuff, but if you get to their roots, they're nasty little buggers, okay? But they changed form. Okay, they could change form. Okay, so let's look at a skinwalker. What's a skinwalker? And allegedly, when you talk about it, it brings them around. I was doing a video on the original channel out in my living room. And when I started talking about it, you could hear this scratching on the outside of my door. Again, you guys know I'm like gang stalked by spirits here, and I've actually found really good information on that in the Law of One that I was checking out, which kind of started why I wanted to do the live today. But the one vote was for skinwalkers, so I didn't get into consciousness, but found some interesting things about wandering spirits, which again could kind of relate to beings that change form. But let's look at skinwalker real quick. And again, this is a brief look. I know we went over a lot of this stuff on the main channel. We're going to get into the deepness of this, into certain like specific areas, but I want to just give people a, dip your toes into the topic. So in Navajo culture, a skinwalker is a type of harmful witch who has the ability to turn into, possess, or disguise themselves as an animal. The term is never used for healers. Okay, so the legend actually, you have to sacrifice a loved one. You have to sacrifice a family member to be able to do this. And then you can turn into, possess, or disguise yourself as an animal. Your animal is your animal familiar. That's what it's called. Allegedly, this is the Navajo version of this. In the normal witch background, you don't find that a whole lot talking about that type of sacrifice. But in the Navajo legend, the person started as a healer, right? Which sometimes are referred to as witches because they know how to blend herbs and things. Again, we have to get our mind out of this superstitious, I'm scared of everything mentality. Because if you're in, what are you? If you're in fear and you're scared all the time, that's victim mentality. And we're going to talk about that in a whole video all by itself. Because I don't believe in victim shaming at all. I've been a victim. But again, labels are fluid, right? Emotions are fluid. Those things are fluid. Truth is not fluid. There are certain things that you don't go against, right? We don't have that ability. We are not the maker of this place. But I do believe, again, the Mormons might have some of that right, in that God wants us to be like God so we can then have fellowship with God, where God reigns, where God is. But in the beginning, even, God had to come down to Eden to walk with Adam. He walked with Adam every night, the book of Adam and Eve says. But he came down to do it. We didn't go up. I think this whole process is about that process, about ascension, transmutation, and resurrection. Do they all happen together simultaneously, or one in conjunction with the other? We'll talk about that too. But this is why we're looking at these legends about this, because you can obviously choose different paths, right? And this is one that I would not recommend to anybody. I would not want a loved one to be mixed up in anything like this, although I had reason to believe that these types of things are going on. And not in just my family, but on YouTube and in the celebrity circles. And you see this. Somebody gets celebrity status, immediately following the death of a close loved one. And that person oftentimes and starts out normal, right? And then you see them get deeper and deeper into the culture, and they get very weird to the point that even their outside starts changing. Is that part of this process? Are they then reflecting the ugliness that is within and the ugliness and wickedness of their deeds? Are they in fact turning into, quote unquote, the ugly witch, right? All right, so where else have we seen skinwalkers, but they weren't actually called that? Who else can shapeshift? Well, of course we have to talk about these guys. Oh, wow. Why is that on LinkedIn? And you guys know I do the research with you. This is to help some people learn how to research effectively in short periods of time, use proper search words and whatnot, and how to filter things. But this is weird. LinkedIn, okay, LinkedIn is where you put your employment history and your resume in hopes that an employer will seek you out. Usually it's for more prestigious jobs. It's more effective that way. But I will say that when all this began, and I told you I found a lot of data in devices that were in my home, and that happens when you have like family Gmail searches and things become visible to other people. This is why there really is no such thing as privacy. If it's something you don't want somebody knowing, you better not speak it aloud, write it down, or Google it, because everybody's going to know. And that's the society we're in today. And in part, I hate to say this because I'm very for sovereignty and things, but it's almost like that's what some people need to feel like they're being watched all the time so that they grow their conscience back again. And I know that it's something I had to remind myself of daily. Okay, you're being watched. Behave yourself. Like, just behave, right? And I used to be so good. Like, I know Jesus said no one was good, but I wasn't always that way. So I know it's easy to get caught up in the sludge that is, media and internet, gunk. But this is interesting because LinkedIn was actually one of the places where I was able to discover that a lot of missing 411 people were also registered respiratory therapists. There are these clusters of missing people. When they do a cluster study, they look in one group or one area for, like MS is really big in the area that I live in for some weird reason. Cancer is really big in the coal areas, coal states, right? Carcinogens. So they look for these certain environmental factors that might be causing this to a whole community or village or town. Missing 411 has these clusters that I discovered of similarities. You have groups of people who were on SSI. And I wonder if all those same people also had life insurance on them. You have these groups of people who had thyroid issues and or were bald. For whatever reason, they were taken. You have clusters of children. And you have clusters of respiratory therapists. And you have clusters of military personnel. And a very high percentage of female to male ratio. Why is that? So it's very odd to see this on LinkedIn, but I'll click it to see what happens. The ancient giants who ruled America. Smithsonian cover-up. Know the difference between shapeshifting falling angels, demons, and Nephilim. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Oh my gosh, guys. Oh my gosh. That I was in Florida that day. That's also I'll guarantee it that's almost the same time that the spiral showed up in the Florida sky. And they also had their ocean was turning red. Allegedly, it's due to bacteria, this, that, and the other. But yeah, the ocean in certain areas along the coast was blood red. In this same month, and maybe the same day. Hold, please. I gotta look that up. What would I call this? May 2018. Florida spiral in sky. My memory, like, that's why I know the little chunks of memory that I am missing were manipulated and I was messed with, because for whatever reason, I remember everything that I read and look at. And January 9th, let's look at, can we look at, and then you would filter it and I'll do news. So let's see. 2023, there it is, 2018. That's January. No, this was in Florida. And I did a video on it. It might be gone. I don't remember. No. Wow. It happened in January too, over Hawaii. And you guys remember in Hawaii how they got that text messages about an emergency and to seek shelter, but they were told it was false? There's a lot of strange things going on in Hawaii. If it's still over there, who knows what's going on anymore? Where is it? I will find it and I will post it on the community tab. We'll get back to Shapeshifters. That just really caught me off guard. I apologize. I was like, that's special. And I think my pictures, I know my pictures are dated May. That is wicked. July 4th, 2019. Sorry, I know I got off track. I like to back up what I say. It makes me frustrated when I can't find what I'm looking for. Okay, so we'll move back to shapeshifting. Shapeshifting angels. Angels who shape. Let's do that first. Okay. So we're going to have to take, I'm going to bookmark that LinkedIn one. You see it there. You see what I searched. I would definitely advise checking that out, especially because of the day. The Watchers of Sataniel, and this is at Marquette University. That's special. The Fallen Angels Traditions in 2. That's the Slavonic Book of... See, I wish I like the Book of One. Like, you can actually, on Google, you can search for what you're looking for. Adam appears to be not good. The careful examination teaches. Unveils that the transference of the leadership over the Watchers from Semyaza and Asael to Sataniel represents not a coincidental slip of pen or sign of a lack of knowledge, but an intentional attempt of introducing the Adamic development into the framework of the Enochic story, a move executed by the authors of the Slavonic Apocalypse with a certain purpose. Unusual adoption and tradition from the Adamic, a tendency for which appears to be quite surprising for some. Huh. That'll be good to read. All right. Catholic answers, and that's weird because in the actual Catholic doctrine, we are actually told about how the angels change shape and appearance of people. Like, they take on the image of people. They look like us when they come here. So fandom always gives us a good... Now, this is urban mythology, right? This is things that are more current mythology, we'll say. As warriors of God and agents of fate, angels are powerful beings in the supernatural world, possessing a wide range of abilities that vary from angel to angel depending on the class of the angel. Angels get their power from their grace and wings. Their grace supplies them with a certain amount of Enochian magic. Their grace, and that's different, right? Like, that version of grace, that the way it's being used there, we wouldn't think that it would give you magic, right? Maybe God's supernatural faith, but does great, that's different. And the condition of wings affect their overall strength and abilities. What can they do? Possession. Similar to demons, angels require a vessel while on earth. However, they must have the vessel's permission. There's the consent coming in. And this is, I've heard this as well. This is also greatly shown in the show Supernatural. That has a lot of, they add a lot of traditional lore and mythology into that show. It's actually a good source of a variety of different tidbits like that. Now, okay, I hate saying their names because allegedly that's how, you know, when you call somebody, you say their name, right? Hey, son, come do this for me. I don't really like saying their names all the time. I don't want them thinking like I'm calling them. Give me a thumbs up if you feel me there. So this is, I'm not going to say it. You can read it. However, they must have, blah, blah, states that even once they are possessed, the vessel can expel the angel at anyone, but it's presumably does not apply for all angels. Angels can only continue to possess humans of a specific bloodline. That's crazy. I actually said that. I told you this. I told you that I was seeing signs around me, and if you go and you watch the video titled Reincarnation, the Truth, you'll see where I tell this story. I have to go. We'll catch up later. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, yes. And I used to love that song. Bye, Katia. I hope you have a lovely day. I'll miss you. It's so awesome when you stop by. I hope everything's well. You should shoot me an email. Okay, so I've said this. If you go watch the video titled Reincarnation, the Truth, I talk about how I was shown, and I'm not going to use names, not going to get into it, but I'm being given clues that this is going on around me. For example, I have relations who are not acting like themselves. They're acting like other relations. Even that there's a change in appetite, foods they eat, the way they walk, the way they talk, still sound the same, still look the same, but everything else is different. And again, sometimes women have the ability, women have an inherent ability to feel and see spirit in the way men can't. And I don't mean that in a negative way, because men have abilities that women don't have. We're just different, and that's not bad. We should capitalize on our differences. They're supposed to be complementary to each other, not in competition with each other. And I hope that makes sense. Okay, so let's continue. Not many people are here, so I'm going to go briefly. This is awesome. Okay, this is talking about supernatural. It says electromagnetic interference at dream walking, which we've talked about on the channel. If you'd like to talk about dream walking more, let me know in the comment section, because it's something I really would like to get into. Angels can project shadowy forms of their wings onto surfaces at will. If one is killed by angel blades, its wings are burned onto the surface on which they died. That's also not the only show that portrays that. There are a lot of movies, and again, you can tell their hand is in this, and they're inspiring humans, or they're actually living lives of humans. Its wings are burned onto the surface on which they died. That happens in several movies that I've watched, although I don't remember all of them. His dark materials, there's shape-shifting. In the Tanakh, let's see, is there any mention in the Tanakh of angels having the ability to shapeshift? Now, this is Jewish tradition. I assume my Yoreya. Yeah, it's Judaism. It looks like Kiora. Is there any mention? So we see in a number of cases that, usually translated as angels, Malachim can. Yes, so let's see. There is some debate among great Jewish philosophers whether the angels that the Torah describes as appearing actually assumed a visible physical form, or they appeared in the course of a spiritual vision or prophecy, in which the angels appeared as physical beings. But see, we are told You never know when you are entertaining an angel either. All right. So in common lore, who else would you say was a shapeshifter? Well, here's another one. And I did a whole thing on this, and I will again, hopefully in a better way. But I did a whole video on this and how it relates to what we're seeing play out in current events. And I've seen it in my own life. You don't have to believe me, but personal experience does help when backing things up. You know, you try to back them up with logic, reason, and repetition, which is experience. So, Little Red Riding Hood. Who was the shapeshifter in Little Red Riding Hood? It was the wolf. The wolf in sheep's clothing. The wolf was, and they're not going to show the wolf, so let's see if someone else does. The wolf took on the image of Grandma. Did the wolf literally do this? Well, in fairy tales, as we know, they are sometimes sanitized for the general public. So you would have to go back to the original Grimm's, which I actually have a book that I found at the Magic Consignment Shop of Grimm's Fairy Tales. We can read it anytime if there's something you're specifically interested in. Again, let me know below. Books are a huge part of the channel, and so I always take recommendations and whatnot. Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf was the shapeshifter. He came in an image that was friendly to her and comforting to her and familiar to her in order to what? To consume her, to corrupt her and consume her. Okay? So we have it in fairy tales all over the place. We have these shape-shifting type of beings. All right? Now let's try again. Oops. Oh, here's a list. How handy. Human turning into... Wow, I might do a short video with just the list. Human turning into an animal. Animagus from Harry Potter. Berserker from Werebear. Pokemon, they are shapeshifters from what I understand. These are all different names for a human turning into an animal. The werewolf, the werecat, the wendigo, and they're all presented in different forms, but they all have attributes of human and animal. Now, an animal turning into a human, these are all the different names for that. Why would we have this in all these different cultures? Okay? Look. Cat, dolphin, spider, fox, otter, snake, ant, seal, raccoon dog, crocodile or shark. How many animals did Noah have on the ark? Maybe they weren't all God's creations. And here are others where you have things like the banshee, the changeling, a demon, a doppelganger, which is big, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. There's another example of man shape-shifting into an uglier or worse or his worst version, much like the witch and the evil queen in Snow White. I'm trying to think of other Disney ones and fairy tales that had them as well. References. A mimic, that's one. Who is the god of shapeshifters? Loki, because he is the god of what? Trickery, deceit, and shapeshifting. And then it tells you he's often spider-like and creepy. He's usually depicted with a fishing net or a knot. Okay. Who else? Ancient origins. Now this will be a good one to save for the next video on this topic. I think we'll take a look at this, because this gives you a little bit of everything. But this is something we are going to take a deeper dive into because it is relevant to consciousness. Can we change our own image, and are we supposed to? I want to show you something I found. The law of one, it refers to these things called wanderers. Okay? Um, and I don't know if it goes in order, but this is the law of one, and allegedly it was information channeled through someone named Ra. There you have that Egyptian reference again. And remember, Christ's father was Egyptian. And it's odd, you never hear what happened with him. Mary followed Christ everywhere. I got to look into Joseph a little more. Anyways, I'm going to run. It's been a little over an hour. Oh, just over an hour. We're going to get into this more. This book, I just wanted to give you a little peek. It talks about wanderers. I think we need to talk about that because these beings also come and go, much like you hear. It would be what you see possessing a organic portal, for example. These are the ones who kind of do that type of thing, but not in the bad way. These aren't the bad ones. These are like Christ and, higher ascended masters and beings who come back to help us evolve further spiritually. So we're going to look at this. Again, it's a little racy. It's not a Christian thing at all. But I want to see if there's any truth in here because it has a lot to do with consciousness. And I think there are things we have to take a look at and either, dismiss or accept. And not everybody knows this stuff is out there. Not everybody is exposed to these types of things. I think it's important just to let people know, you don't know if you don't know. At least now you have choices and options, maybe. Or you know that down deep at the root of things, we really do have this common thread, and it is our spiritual process, refinement, and evolution. But we're going to talk more about the relation of skinwalking to actually transmuting. In the next one, we'll bring up transmuting and take a look at beings who allegedly were able to do that, like Christ. You guys have a blessed day. I love you. We'll talk soon. Watch for more videos because I have a few shorter ones just to upload as